The text came through at 11:47 on a Saturday. It was from my brother, Trevor. Lunch at the Commodore's deck. 1 o'clock. Don't be late. And Victoria, try to dress appropriately this time. We have a VIP investor coming. My brother always had a talent for making invitations sound like threats. I stood on the deck of the Vanguard, looking at the message, the salt spray of the harbor drying on my skin. He was telling me to dress appropriately to enter a yacht club that I had secretly bought 18 months ago. I didn't get angry. I just set the phone down. If he wanted a show, I would give him one. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been the black sheep who was secretly doing better than everyone else? I want to hear your story. I pulled my Jeep Wrangler into the Harbor Point lot at 12:55. I parked it right between Trevor's leased Porsche and Jessica's gleaming G-Wagon. The visual contrast was almost violent. Their cars were pristine, polished liabilities. Mine was covered in dried mud and salt spray, a tool that had actually seen the world. I stepped out, adjusting my windbreaker. To the members walking by, I looked like deck crew. They looked right through me, eyes sliding past the woman in the work boots to admire the view of the marina. But I wasn't looking at the view. I was looking at the asset. As I walked toward the clubhouse, I didn't see a playground for the wealthy. I saw a capital expenditure report. I saw the new reinforced concrete pilings I had approved last February. $48,500 to ensure the docks didn't collapse during the king tides. I saw the new biometric security scanners at the gate, installed 2 weeks ago to keep out the exact kind of people my family pretended to be. I saw the fresh paint on the hull of the club launch, paid for by the operational efficiency I'd implemented in week 1. To them, this place was a stage. To me, it was a machine, and I was the mechanic who kept it humming. Trevor was waiting at the entrance, arms crossed, vibrating with anxiety. He was wearing a linen suit that probably cost more than my first boat. He looked at me, then down at my boots, his face twisting into a sneer. "You look like you just gutted a fish," he hissed, stepping close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne. "We have the investor arriving in 20 minutes. This is a critical meeting, Victoria. Do not stand near the windows. Do not talk to the staff. Just try not to look like a drifter for 1 hour." I looked at his hands. They were soft, manicured, lotion-scented. Hands that had never held a line against a gale, never soldered a circuit board in the dark, never felt the vibration of a thruster engine. Then I looked at my own hands. My knuckles were dry, my palms calloused, a small white scar running across my thumb from a snapped cable. He saw dirt. I saw capability. He thought power was a clean suit and a loud voice. I knew power was the ability to keep the engine running when the storm hit. I was the engine. He was just the hood ornament. He kept talking, listing the rules for my existence. Don't embarrass him, don't eat loudly, don't breathe the wrong way. I let the insults wash over me like rain on a waterproof coat. People always ask me why I never told them the truth. Why I let them treat me like a stray dog when I owned the kennel. It wasn't because I was afraid. It was because I had realized years ago that sharing my success with them was like throwing fresh meat into a shark tank. They wouldn't celebrate it. They would consume it. They would devour my peace, my money, and my hard work, and then complain about the taste. Silence wasn't my hiding spot. It was my boundary. It was the only wall high enough to keep their greed out of my life. So I didn't correct him. I didn't tell him I was the investor he was terrified of meeting. I didn't tell him that the security guard behind him was waiting for my signal. I just nodded. "I'll stay out of the way," I said calmly. He didn't catch the irony. He just checked his reflection in the glass door, straightened his tie, and led me inside to the slaughter. The table was table 4. It was the corner spot on the terrace, offering a panoramic view of the harbor and the skyline beyond. It was the best seat in the house, permanently reserved in the system under management hold. My family thought they had charmed the hostess into giving it to them. They didn't know they were sitting there because I hadn't bothered to tell the staff to block it off today. My father, Richard, was already sweating through his dress shirt, scanning the room to see who was watching us. My mother, Patricia, was fussing with the silverware, her smile tight and practiced. Jessica was holding her phone up, live-streaming the view to her followers, narrating a life she couldn't actually afford. "We're celebrating big moves today," she chirped into the screen, tilting her head to catch the light. "Big family business." I sat down and unfolded my napkin. The waiter approached, a young man named David who I knew was saving for law school. He looked at me, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, but I gave him a micro shake of my head. He stiffened, professional mask sliding back into place. "We'll start with the Grand Plateau Seafood Tower," Trevor announced without looking at the menu. "And a bottle of the '08 vintage. The expensive one." He looked at me, a smirk playing on his lips. "Don't worry, Victoria. I'm covering it. I know things are tight on the water." I ordered an iced tea. The conversation started with the usual noise. Trevor talked about a merger that didn't exist. Jessica complained about the sponsorship deal she had supposedly turned down. Dad complained about the capital gains tax on money he no longer had. Then the air shifted. The appetizers arrived, but nobody reached for them. "Victoria," my father started, clearing his throat. "Your mother and I have been reviewing the estate planning. Specifically, the grandmother's trust." I took a sip of my tea. Here it was. "Given the current economic climate," Trevor continued, taking over the meeting like he was chairing a board, "we need to be strategic. Jessica and I have brands to maintain. We have overhead. We have public profiles that reflect on the family legacy." He gestured vaguely at my windbreaker. "You, on the other hand. You have chosen a simpler life. Low expenses. Living off the grid. It doesn't make sense for resources to sit stagnant when they could be generating yield." "So," my mother cut in, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "we've decided to restructure the distribution. Trevor and Jessica will receive the bulk of the principal to reinvest in the family businesses. We've set aside a one-time payment for you. $100,000. It's a safety net, dear. So you don't have to worry about docking fees." 100,000. The trust was valued at roughly $12 million the last time I checked the public filings. They were cutting me out of 99% of my inheritance. I looked at them. I studied their faces. They were waiting for me to scream. They wanted me to cry, to call them unfair, to make a scene. They needed me to be the emotional wreck so they could be the pragmatic adults making hard choices. "That seems fair," I said. The table went dead silent. Trevor blinked. Jessica lowered her fork. "Fair," my father repeated, confused. "You have expenses. You don't make sense." Disappointment washed over them. It was palpable. My compliance robbed them of their justification. If I didn't fight, they were just thieves. If I fought, they were disciplinarians. I looked at Trevor, picking at a lobster claw he hadn't paid for, and I finally understood the mechanism of their blindness. It wasn't that they didn't know about my success. It was that they couldn't know. It was a psychological survival instinct. If I was the failure, then their mediocrity could be framed as success by comparison. But if I was successful, if the daughter they mocked was actually a titan of industry, then what were they? They were just hollow shells in rented suits. Their egos required my failure as a structural load-bearing wall. To acknowledge my worth would be to collapse their own reality. They weren't just blind. They had gouged out their own eyes to avoid looking at the sun. "Good," Trevor said, his voice tight. "I'm glad you're being reasonable for once. Now let's eat quickly. The investor will be here any minute." I sliced a lemon into my tea. I wasn't hungry. The bill for lunch came, and Trevor waved it away with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Put it on my member account," he told David. He didn't even look at the total. He stood up, checking his watch, his leg bouncing with a nervous energy that was starting to make the silverware rattle. "It's 1:45, he announced. "The investor is meeting us in the Commodore's lounge. Let's move." The Commodore's lounge was the inner sanctum of Harbor Point. It was separated from the main dining room by a wall of frosted glass and a set of automated turnstiles that required a platinum-tier membership key. It was designed to be exclusionary. It was designed to make people like my family feel important, and people like me feel invisible. We walked across the polished marble floor. My parents walked with their heads high, performing their role as the local aristocracy for an audience that wasn't watching. Jessica was tapping out a text, probably updating her followers on the exclusive access she was about to enjoy. I trailed behind, hands in my pockets, watching the scene unfold with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a lab experiment. Trevor reached the turnstiles first. He pulled his platinum card from his wallet with a flourish, holding it like a scepter. He tapped it against the reader. A sharp, dissonant buzz cut through the ambient jazz. The small LED light on the panel flashed a harsh, angry red. Trevor frowned. He wiped the card on his linen jacket and tapped it again. Red. "Must be demagnetized," he muttered, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a cough. He tried a third time, jamming the card against the plastic. Red. Access denied. The line behind us was empty, but the silence from the nearby tables was heavy. People were starting to look. My mother's smile faltered. "Richard, help him," she whispered, as if my father could intimidate a microchip. A young woman in a blazer, the concierge for the lounge, stepped out from behind her podium. Her name was Sarah. I had approved her hiring last month because she remained calm under pressure. She looked at the readout on her monitor, then at Trevor. I saw her throat bob as she swallowed. "Mr. Wilson," she said softly, trying to keep the conversation private. "I'm sorry, but the system is flagging your membership as inactive. I can't let you through." Inactive. Trevor's voice rose an octave. "That's impossible. I'm a founding member. I'm meeting a business partner in there right now. Open the gate." "I'm afraid I can't do that, sir. The system locks it automatically when..." Trevor slammed his hand on the glass partition. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Conversations stopped. Forks froze halfway to mouths. The veneer of sophisticated wealth that my family relied on shattered instantly. "Do you know who I am?" Trevor shouted, his face turning a mottled shade of crimson. "I bring clients here who buy and sell this entire building before breakfast. I am not some tourist you can lock out." Sarah took a step back, her hands shaking slightly, but she held her ground. "Sir, please lower your voice or I'll have to call security." "Security?" Trevor laughed, a manic, jagged sound. "You're going to call security on me? I want to see your manager." "Get the general manager down here before I have you fired for incompetence." My mother reached out, clutching Trevor's arm. "Trevor, please, people are staring. Just use your father's card." Dad stepped forward, looking gray. He pulled out his own card, his hand trembling. He tapped it. Red. The machine didn't care about their last name. It didn't care about their legacy or their pretensions. It only cared about the data. And the data said they were insolvent. I stood by the pillar, watching them unravel. I didn't step in. I didn't offer to help. I didn't feel embarrassed for them. I felt the cold, hard satisfaction of a balance sheet finally zeroing out. They had spent a lifetime banking on credit they didn't have, both financially and emotionally. Now the bill was due. The commotion had done exactly what Trevor feared most. It had drawn an audience. The dining room doors opened, and Captain Elias stepped out onto the terrace. Elias wasn't a man who rushed. He was 60 years old, with a spine made of iron and a face weathered by 4 decades at sea. I had hired him away from a competitor specifically because he didn't care about money. He cared about order. He walked toward us with the measured stride of someone approaching a navigational hazard. Trevor spun around, pointing a shaking finger at Sarah. "Finally, someone with authority. This incompetence is staggering. Your employee just humiliated a founding member in front of the entire club. I want her fired. And I want this gate opened immediately." Elias stopped 3 feet from the turnstile. He didn't look at the gate. He didn't look at Sarah. He looked at Trevor with an expression of mild curiosity, as if observing a particularly noisy seagull. "Mr. Wilson," Elias said, his voice deep and gravelly, "please lower your voice. You are disturbing the members." "Disturbing the members." Trevor sputtered, his face turning purple. "I am a member. I am a Platinum Legacy member. And I am currently being blocked from my own lounge while waiting for the owner of this establishment. Do you know how much money I'm about to bring into this club?" Elias didn't blink. He just adjusted his cuff. "I am aware of who you are meeting, Mr. Wilson. And I am aware of your membership status." "Then open the damn gate." Elias ignored the command. Instead, he turned his back on Trevor. He turned his back on my father, who was still holding his useless card like a shield. He turned directly to me. The silence on the terrace was absolute. My mother frowned, looking between Elias and me, confused by the shift in gravity. Why was the general manager looking at the deckhand? Elias straightened his posture. He didn't bow, he wasn't a servant, but he gave a sharp, respectful nod. A salute in everything but name. "Commodore," he said. "The bridge is securing the perimeter. How do you wish to proceed?" The word hung in the air. "Commodore." Trevor let out a breathless, incredulous laugh. "Why are you talking to her? She's waiting for me." Focus on your job. Elias turned his head slowly back to Trevor. His eyes were cold. I'm focused on my job, sir. I am addressing the owner. The air left the room. It didn't rush out. It vanished instantly, leaving a vacuum where my family's reality used to be. My mother's hand went to her throat. Jessica's phone lowered. Trevor's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I stood up. I didn't rush. I unfolded my arms and brushed a speck of lint from my windbreaker. I let the silence stretch, heavy and suffocating, forcing them to sit in the dissonance of the moment. They looked at me, desperate for me to deny it. Desperate for me to say it was a joke, a mix-up, a prank. Thank you, Captain, I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used in boardrooms in Singapore and shipyards in Hamburg. The voice of someone who didn't need to shout to be heard. What is this? Trevor whispered. His arrogance was cracking, revealing the panic underneath. Victoria. I walked past him. I walked right up to the glass partition he had been banging on. I placed my hand on the sensor. Not a card, just my palm. The reader chirped a cheerful, melodic tone. Access granted. The turnstile slid open smoothly. I bought Harbor Point 18 months ago, I said, turning to face them. I needed a secure deep water berth for the Vanguard and the new autonomous fleet. The club was just collateral. You bought it? My father asked. His voice was gray. For $48.5 million. I stepped through the gate into the lounge, crossing the threshold they were barred from. I turned back to look at them. My family, the people who had spent a lifetime telling me I didn't belong in their world. They were standing on the other side of the glass, small and distorted. I am the shadow investor, Trevor. I am the meeting you were waiting for. And you're late. I reached out and took the tablet from Captain Elias. It was heavy, an industrial-grade device meant for maritime operations, not for polite dinner conversation. I held it like a weapon. The silence in the Commodore's lounge was absolute. Even the ambient jazz seemed to have stopped. My family stared at me through the glass partition, their faces pressed close like fish in an aquarium, distorted by panic and condensation. Elias unlocked the screen. The interface was clean, brutal, and entirely red. Let's review the portfolio you're so proud of, Trevor, I said, my voice amplified slightly by the acoustics of the high ceiling. I didn't need to shout. They were listening with every cell in their bodies. I scrolled down. Berth 42. The Sea Wolf. 40-foot Sunseeker. Leased not owned. And currently in arrears on docking fees for 8 months. You owe the marina $29,600, Trevor. Trevor flinched as if I'd slapped him. That's an accounting error. My finance team handles. You don't have a finance team, I interrupted, tapping the screen to open the next file. I ran a due diligence check on your venture capital firm, Apex Horizon. It's a shell company registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. No assets, no liquidity, no investors. You aren't here to pitch me a deal. You're here because your bridge loan fell through, and you need a bailout before the repo men take the car you parked next to my Jeep. Jessica gasped. She looked at Trevor, betrayal warring with fear in her eyes. But I wasn't done with her. And Jessica, I said, looking at my sister. That sponsorship trip to Tulum last month. The one you posted about nonstop. It wasn't sponsored. It was charged to Mom and Dad's black card, which is currently $40,000 over its limit. I looked at my parents. My father had slumped against the glass, defeated. My mother was weeping, her hands covering her face, the shame finally penetrating her vanity. You didn't come here to restructure the trust, I said, the realization settling over me like cold water. You came here to empty it. You needed my signature to release the final principle because you've already burned through everything else. Trevor slammed his hand against the glass again, but there was no power in it this time. Just desperation. Victoria, stop. We can explain. It's a cash flow issue. We just need. I know about the signature, I said. That stopped him. His mouth hung open. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. 3 years ago, I said, my voice dropping to a register that was almost a whisper, yet it carried through the glass with terrifying clarity. A withdrawal of $200,000 from my portion of the initial distribution. I never signed for it. I was in the North Sea installing sensors on a tanker. But there's a document in the probate file with my name on it. It looks a lot like your handwriting, Trevor. That was the kill shot. It wasn't just mismanagement. It wasn't just debt. It was a felony, fraud, forgery, grand larceny. I looked at them, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see giants. I didn't see the arbiters of my worth. I saw criminals. I saw small, desperate people who had built a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and then tried to evict me from the only solid ground they had left. I handed the tablet back to Elias. Commodore. Yes. Initiate the maritime lien on the Sea Wolf, I ordered. Seize the vessel to cover the outstanding debt. Notify the port authority. Done, Elias said, tapping the screen. And Elias. Yes, ma'am. Revoke their guest privileges. Permanently. Photograph them and distribute the images to security. If they set foot on Harbor Point property again, have them arrested for trespassing. I turned my back on the glass. I didn't watch them scream. I didn't watch Trevor beg. I didn't watch my mother slide down the wall to the floor. I walked into the lounge, the sound of my boots on the marble echoing the finality of a gavel coming down. They followed me to the parking lot. It was pathetic, really. Inside the club, they had been titans of industry, judging my boots and my life. Out here on the asphalt, stripped of their delusions and their credit limits, they were just four desperate people chasing a jeep. My mother reached me first. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into the sleeve of my windbreaker. Her face was a ruin of mascara and panic. Victoria, please, she sobbed, the tears finally real because the consequences were finally real. We did our best. We raised you. You can't destroy us over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Pulled my arm free. You stole $200,000 from me. That's not a misunderstanding, Patricia. That's a felony. I am your father. My dad bellowed, trying to summon the authority he had wielded over me for 29 years. He stepped between me and the car door, chest heaving. I demand you stop this foreclosure. You will go back in there, tell Elias it was a mistake, and write a check to cover the arrears. Right now. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had spent my entire life making me feel small so he could feel tall. I realized, with a jolt of clarity, that I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires investment. Anger implies that you still care about the outcome. I didn't. I felt nothing but a cool, detached indifference. I'm not going to do that, I said. Why? Trevor screamed, pacing behind them like a caged animal. Why are you doing this? Because we didn't ask about your stupid boats. Because we didn't invite you to the gala. You're going to ruin us out of spite. I opened the car door and tossed my bag onto the passenger seat. I turned back to them one last time. I'm not doing this out of spite, Trevor. I'm doing it because I'm done being your anchor. They froze. For 10 years I stayed silent, I said, my voice steady over the sound of the wind in the rigging. You thought my silence was weakness. You thought I was hiding because I was ashamed of my life. But I wasn't hiding. I was protecting you. My silence was the only thing standing between you and the truth of your own incompetence. I let you believe I was the failure so you could keep pretending you were the successes. I carried the weight of your ego so you wouldn't have to carry the weight of your reality. I climbed into the driver's seat. I'm cutting the line, I said. You're on your own. Sink or swim. I started the engine. I didn't wait for them to move. I reversed out of the spot, leaving them standing in a huddle of grief and greed, shrinking in my rearview mirror until they were just specks against the white facade of the club I owned. That night, I stood on the bridge of the Vanguard. The harbor was quiet, save for the rhythmic humming of the automated cranes loading a container ship in the distance. My phone buzzed on the console. It was Trevor, then my mother, then a number I didn't recognize. Probably a lawyer they couldn't afford. I didn't answer. I didn't decline. I just opened the settings and blocked them, one by one. Block, block, block. It was the most efficient administrative task I had performed all day. I poured a glass of wine, a $20 bottle I liked, not the 4-digit vintage Trevor had tried to order, and walked out onto the deck. The air was cold and clean. Below me, the dark water churned as one of my autonomous drone ships engaged its thrusters, beginning its long, silent journey across the Atlantic. It didn't need a crew. It didn't need praise. Just did the work. I had built an empire in the dark so I could finally live in the light. I was alone, yes. But looking out at the lights of the marina, at the fleet that moved at my command, I realized I wasn't lonely. I was free. If you've ever had to cut an anchor loose to save your own ship, hit that share button. And tell me in the comments, what's the one success you're keeping silent about until the time is right?